I want to say welcome to everyone who's here. I'm Ann Hesse, and I lead the Democrats Abroad Global Women's Caucus. And thank you so much for joining our very first GWC event of 2024. And Happy New Year to all of you. Well, okay, I don't know about you, but I am full of optimism for the new year and full of gratitude as well. Optimism because I firmly believe that we are on the right track and we will prevail in defending democracy and women's freedom in this crucial election year. And gratitude for the incredible team of GWC volunteers who are working tirelessly to make it all happen. Our volunteers form a diverse team that spans the globe and includes all generations, from trailblazers who stood at the forefront of the second wave feminist movement in the 70s to dynamic professional women in the middle of their careers, and our passionate team of recent graduates and students still carving their paths. We are the community where experience meets innovation for the benefit of all women. We are the stakeholders standing at the crossroads of women's rights and the future of our society. And as our event title suggests, our vote will indeed shape the future of 2024 and well beyond. Well, first of all, let's address a fundamental aspect of our democratic responsibility, the call to register to vote. Our participation in the electoral process is not just a civic duty. This time around, it's a lifeline. Decisions made at the ballot box this year will have far-reaching consequences, shaping the policies that govern our lives and the lives of our daughters, and maybe even our granddaughters. So our first duty this year is to register ourselves to vote and encourage everyone we know to do the same, because quite literally, our lives could depend on it. The road to a future where women's rights are respected and protected has been rough and strewn with obstacles. A recent federal court ruling has sent shockwaves through the landscape of reproductive rights, suggesting that emergency rooms are not required to provide life-saving abortions. Well, let's not mince words. It's been called the let women die principle. This callous disregard for women's lives underscores the urgent need for action on our part. At the heart of the anti-abortion movement lies an ideology that seeks to confine women to a role of subservience. This ideology, rooted in patriarchal religious beliefs, dictates that women exist for the benefit of others, obedient helpmates and all-giving caretakers, with no right to pursue their own desires or dreams. This is fundamental to the plan to force women to carry pregnancies against their will. One of the standard talking points of the anti-abortion movement is the notion that healthcare workers must treat a pregnant woman and the fetus as equal patients. In essence, the woman ceases to be the primary patient, and her well-being becomes secondary to the interests of the fetus. Such a perspective leaves little room for a woman's autonomy and personal choices, even when her life is in jeopardy. Feminists rightly argue that abortion bans relegate women to second-class citizens. The aftermath of the Dobbs decision, which unfolded just a year and a half ago, has left a trail of devastation with a cascade of anti-abortion laws. And the anti-abortion movement shows no signs of slowing down. In fact, its impact is reverberating globally. We are facing not only challenges on our own borders, but also the threat of anti-abortion extremism spreading like a cancer across the world. Anti-abortion extremism is a growing menace that knows no borders. To those who believe they're safe because they live in Europe or any modern society worldwide, well, think again. The danger is spreading, and we must confront it now on our own home turf before it's too late. As we approach the upcoming election, we, as American women living around the world, recognize that our choices will resonate not only within the United States, but will have a profound and lasting impact on women's rights globally. What we do today will reverberate into the future, shaping the destiny of generations to come. So let our program today be a call to action, a confident rallying cry for a future where women's rights are not just protected, but celebrated. We will hear today from several of our GWC leaders who will guide our discussion of crucial issues impacting women, and they'll take your questions. And we're looking forward to hearing your point of view as well. But first, we'll start with an inspiring clip from one of my favorite feminist warriors, Lee McGowan, better known around the world as Politics Girl. Angela, you got that clip?
I do. Lee couldn't be here today with us because she's in California and there's such a giant time span between us. And she's also working on a new book. So she's going to join us hopefully on her book tour. But in the meantime, let's take a look at this video that she sent us.
So the other night I had a dream. And before you say it, I know you're not supposed to tell people about your dreams because it's kind of annoying. But I'm telling you this because I'm a really vivid dreamer. I talk in my sleep, I've walked in my sleep, and my dreams are just incredibly detailed and realistic. And if I'm paying attention, I can learn a lot about my life when I take a look at what I'm dreaming about. Anyway, in my dream, I was at work. And a man I haven't thought about in years was cornering me in an office space that I couldn't get out of. I couldn't leave. I had to just stay there even though I knew I was in danger. And many women listening to my story right now know that feeling. It's a feeling where you have to make something work in the moment or you can make it a lot worse. The goal becomes to placate someone's emotions, to offset their anger or their resentment just long enough to make sure you get out of the situation safely. The thing is, I haven't thought about this man in a long time. 100 years ago, he was my boss, but I haven't thought about him since #MeToo is a thing, and I finally had words for what had happened to me, when I could finally explain why my career was derailed, even just to myself. But as I lay there in the dark, after waking up in the middle of the night, I found that I was still afraid. And I was mad at myself for feeling afraid because it was such a long time ago, and because it wasn't real, and because I'm smarter now, and I feel like I would somehow have handled it better than I did back then. But then I realized it wouldn't matter. If I was in the situation I was in my dream, it wouldn't matter how ballsy I was or how much I'd want to fight back. I would have done the same thing to make sure I was safe. And then I started to wonder why I had that dream. And I came to the conclusion it's because I no longer feel safe in this country. That Americans are now living in a reality in which predator men who don't follow the rules or use their power to hurt people who are weaker or deemed lesser or who have less authority, seem to be on a rising tide. That men who intimidate and bully are holding endless positions of power. We live in a country in which the richest man in the world just took over our biggest social news and information site and is using it to platform Nazis and misogynists and anti-Semites. Who just did an interview with the man guilty of lying about the dead children at Sandy Hook for his own profit. The leading Republican candidate for president is a known rapist and a racist and a xenophobic predator who gets off on being cruel, and 1/3 of the country, including 1/2 of our government, wants to make him president. Again. I had that dream because I feel unsafe. Not because of choices I've made, but because my country is making choices that literally make me afraid. Women aren't safe in this country right now. The Republican Party is putting our lives at risk as they abandon our freedoms, and they're perfectly fine with us dying for their beliefs. The Republican Party is setting up leadership that would make us all feel as desperate and helpless as I did in that dream. Donald Trump has told us he wants to consolidate the power of the federal government around himself. This man wants unchecked power so he can corner us all in a metaphoric room and make us bend to his will. This is the country the Republican Party is setting us up for. And I think I had that dream to remind me of the stakes. And I can't just quit like I did in real life. We can't just leave the country. I mean, I guess I could. I was born in Canada, but I sure as hell shouldn't have to. And lots of people don't have the same luxury as me. And just so we're clear, this lack of safety I'm feeling isn't just for women. The trans community is unsafe. The gay community is unsafe. The Muslim and Jewish communities are unsafe. Immigrants are unsafe. The poor are unsafe. This is something that if the Republican Party get their way, everyone who isn't a white, straight Christian man or deferring to them is going to be in trouble. Almost everyone is going to feel just as scared and unbalanced as I did in my early 20s, leaving jobs I'd worked so hard for and careers I truly wanted because it was simply the safer choice. By making Donald Trump the front runner again, by having every leading Republican continue to support him, the country is becoming so much like my workplace from so many years ago. Somewhere where we always have to be on guard because something terrible could happen if we weren't. A place where we have to pretend we feel differently than we do for our own safety and well-being. The walls are closing in America, and the door is being blocked, and it is getting incredibly dangerous. This man and the party that supports him and the zealot fans that follow him are putting us all in jeopardy, and we have to save ourselves before it's too late. I know no one wants to hear about my dream, But this country is becoming an absolute nightmare.
Yeah. America is becoming a nightmare, and we all have to fight for it. To fight to keep our rights, to keep our families safe. I am incredibly concerned about my own family, um, that are trapped in the red state of Ohio and also in the red state of Florida. I have a few relatives. Oh, yes, my other relatives live in the red state of Texas. And so my family is got a target on their backs because they're not quiet people that will just go along with everything. And they're also not white too. So that makes a big difference. So I think it's really important this year that we do everything that we can to try to get out the vote. And I'm curious as to what issues women are concerned about in 2024. I mean, abortion issues are, of course, paramount. As a person who almost died from a pregnancy, I am appalled by the things that people are doing because I believe that I would have just been left to die if this had happened, this year or last year or something like that.
And
So,
also, if I might add, I'll only tell about one bill I received today, but they are rescinding the rape and incest. You could no longer have an abortion in West Virginia if you're raped or you get pregnant because incest. They are taking that away today. They filed a bill taking that away.
wow. So West Virginia is one of those states where we need to win because we have a Senate seat, but there's also a whole bunch of other seats there. And there's a Democratic Party there that has made a big change. One of the reasons probably why the current senator isn't going to run again, because the Democratic Party there has changed and they are more progressive and they are more interested in action. So things are changing and we have to be a part of that change to make it happen. Our next presentation is from Sherry Temple. If you want to go ahead and unmute and I'll spotlight you for everyone.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm here to talk about the Equal Rights Amendment. And I think some of you probably heard me talk about it before. And I do have a couple of slides I want to share. I just got them this week. And they're still in rough draft form, and I didn't have time to pretty them up. So but I think they're pretty compelling. So Angela, if you would put up the first one, please. Okay, so the left-hand side of the screen is just showing you what the Equal Rights Amendment is. The middle is showing what the impacts are, and the right-hand side is showing the status. Basically, the Equal Rights Amendment is something to get women and, of course, all people into the U.S. Constitution. It should have been done in 1776, but it wasn't. And it was introduced in 1923. The amendment simply says equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Now, if you look at the words of the 19th Amendment, you'll see something very similar. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. So it's very similar. Seems like a no-brainer. Seems like anyone you ask, if you say, hey, should women have rights in the U.S. Constitution, they would say yes. But sadly, that's not the case. It took from 1923 until 1972 to pass through the House and Senate. It then went to the states, where it required all the states to ratify it within 7 years. That did not happen. And so as a result, there was extended time period. It still did not happen. And it was only after in 1992 that they realized a bill that had been there for 205 years was suddenly ratified and became our 27th Amendment. And that's when states that had not ratified it started getting their act together. And in 2017, it passed in Nevada. In 2018, it passed in Illinois. And then the last state needed, Virginia, passed it in January of 2020. So if you look at the right-hand side, it has been ratified. We have met all the constitutional requirements, but Trump, and I'll try to leave out four-letter words or other words about him, and had the Attorney General tell the U.S. Archivist not to publish it. And well, I can't avoid using a four-letter word. The U.S. Archivist was a chicken shit and didn't publish it. We have a new archivist now. She's scared to publish it. Biden is saying it's not his problem. The House and Senate have to do something. The House and Senate say, it's not us. It's up to Congress. It's a hot potato. Nobody's agreeing. And here we, over half of the people living in the United States, are still not part of the U.S. Constitution. It's fully ratified. It is there, but it has not been published. I'd contend that if it had been published, that Roe would not have been overturned. They specifically said there was nothing in the Constitution to support it. Having equal rights for women would have. And like it says at the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side, vote like your life depends on it, because it does. As Angela said, she almost died and would have if it hadn't been there. I had a similar experience, and when I was 26, I had an ectopic pregnancy. I was probably an hour from bleeding to death before they did an emergency procedure. And, when Roe was overturned, my husband said, well, why is this such a big deal? And he didn't know that story because I was married to someone else at the time. Although I told it to him, he didn't understand the implications. And suddenly he had a whole different feeling about what the abortion laws mean. So I think telling personal stories can make a difference. I mean, he even asked me to look up the doctor's name so he could personally call and thank him. Unfortunately, when I did, I found his obituary. But anyway, that's a side story. But for the Equal Rights Amendment, I do think telling personal stories does make a difference. And if we look at the middle, Equal Rights Amendment really overlaps with several different areas, significantly with reproductive rights, with gay rights, particularly transgender rights, with equal pay, and then especially with democracy. How can we be a democratic country when less than half of the people in the United States are covered in the U.S. Constitution? So those are the kind of things we need to be thinking about as we go to vote. And then if you'll go over to the next slide. This one really needs some prettying up, but it shows the impact of the areas that the Equal Rights Amendment could have. I don't think it's going to end everything it says end, but definitely would reduce. And the key reason is that a plaintiff wins 20% of the time if they just use rational basis, which is what 47 if they use intermediate scrutiny, and 73% if the ERA was there with strict scrutiny. The 14th Amendment, it does not cover women. People will say it does, and if it does, then you can ask those court judges why they've ruled against women in so many of these cases. So there's lots of things to be impacted if we have the Equal Rights Amendment in place. And then if you just go to the next slide quickly, it's just getting more information. There's Democrats Abroad. There's a /ERA page. You can write me at ERA@Democrats Abroad. And the one thing I'm asking all of you to do, and ask everyone you know to do, is vote. That is the key thing I think we can do. This has become a political issue. It is more Democrats that are pro-equality than there are Republicans. There are some Republicans that are, but if you want to classify them pretty simply, it's in the Senate, there's 2 Republicans that are supporting the Equal Rights Amendment. 2 Republicans. That's it. Both women. And so if by just voting and voting up and down the ballot, because Equal Rights Amendment has impact in all different areas, depending on what happens, if we have to start over, it is going to depend on having Democrats everywhere possible. So, okay, I will answer any questions. I see there's one in the chat. Is this the same ERA that was voted down in the 90s? No ERA's ever been voted down. So let's get that very clear. The Equal Rights Amendment required all the states to pass it. It required 38 states to ratify it. We have 38 states that did ratify it. In 1982, the 10 years was up for the decision that was made, the deadline that was put in the preamble of the amendment, which doesn't mean shit. Sorry, I used another 4-letter word again. Anyway, it didn't matter, and it took women too long to realize that, but they finally did, and they have ratified it now in the 3 additional states that were needed. It is fully ratified. It went into effect 2 years after the final ratification. As far as I'm concerned, the Equal Rights Amendment is the law of the land. Unfortunately, it's not officially been published, so the judges don't agree with me on that. We need 0 more to ratify. It's fully ratified.
We have a question from Ann O'Connell. You want to ask your question, Ann?
Hi, Sherry. Thanks for your great presentation. I really enjoy that. Let me just kind of start video. Just was wondering about the 2 Republican senators. Is it Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins? Okay, I thought that was so.
Absolutely.
Okay, I thought it was,
Yeah.
but just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, you are so right. Okay, Karen.
Oh, I'm unmuted already. Sherry, the points that you just made in answer to the question about voting it down, but it has been voted, it was voted, there was a time limit in the preamble. It's now been ratified by 39 states.
38.
All we need is
38.
38, okay. All we need is to have it published. If that is put together somewhere as a short model letter to send to our senators and our representatives right now and say, please, and to the White House, perhaps, 3 addresses.
Well,
And
if you'll remember, we actually passed a resolution at the Democrats Abroad level that was passed unanimously that said exactly that. It was sent to President Biden, Kamala Harris, to the Speaker of the House, the Minority Leader of the House, the head of the Senate, and to the head of the DNC.
This is cool, but I'm thinking that getting one from each of our constituents might be a little extra push for those people who are elected officials. So if we had that somewhere that we can share with everybody, that would be really helpful, and just put on the push. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. We do have the petition out there and a draft letter, but why don't I add another call to action onto the ERA webpage that has specifically that of sending that resolution from as many of us as possible to our elected officials, and see if that helps.
We have a question from Ann.
Sherry, I wonder if I want to know what is Biden's justification for not instructing the archivist? I mean, we're all on the same team, and it seems to me it would give so much energy to the entire campaign this year if you just stood up and did that. What is the rationale behind not doing that?
There's no good one that I can come up with that like the one slide said, it's kind of like a hot potato. He doesn't want to be the one that, in case there's a backlash, to do it, which I don't think he understands his constituents, his female constituents well enough is probably the problem. But what I don't understand is both he and Kamala Harris both said in the debates when they were running for president that if elected, they supported the implementation of the Equal Rights Amendment. And why they haven't is like the billion-dollar question. And it may be the billion-dollar question because I don't know which corporations are behind funding that because companies don't want this. They don't want to give women equal pay. They don't want to pay for maternity leave. I mean, it is economics. It is not social issues. It is probably money.
Oh, that's interesting. Because he also promised to do something with the student loans, to forgive student loans, and he was thwarted in that effort in the Congress. And so he went around them and did it by executive order. And found ways to keep their promise.
All he has to do is pick up the frickin' phone and call the new archivist and say, you have my permission to do this. Or to call the Department of Justice and tell them to revert the letter of, I forget, Sally, I know the right legal word.
Letter of opinion.
It was
an opinion. It was an opinion letter.
Yeah, to revoke that and then just do it. I mean, it is. Sorry,
there have been demonstrations, right? Wasn't there a demonstration?
Oh, there's been demonstrations almost every month. The last one was on December 12th or 13th. The next one will be on January 27th, the third anniversary of it being ratified by all, the required 38 states. So, yeah.
We have any other? Christina has a question.
Christina has a question. Go ahead, Christina.
I recall that the Supreme Court Justice Ruth Ginsburg had made a statement that when the ERA passes, it will require the United States to change it about at least 700 laws or bills. And I just wondered if that is an impetus for it not to pass, that they would be
I don't think so. There's actually a task force that's already in place working with the different states, reviewing their laws, and several of the states are actually changing their laws to be aligned with it. I don't have the latest statistics on that to give you off the top of my head, but I know that AJ Conway is the one leading it from Illinois. She's a lawyer and is working with the state departments to review all the laws to help identify the laws where there is a violation. And so I know in several states they've actually changed the laws to make them more aligned with it, but we're no one's requiring it yet, but there's some doing it voluntarily already.
So then it just probably boils down that they just don't want to pay women the right wage, maybe.
It is, but I really think
it's about money.
It's about money, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a question from Mohammed in the chat. Is there any indication from President Biden or his team that a potential second term free from election considerations would prompt a shift in their approach of priorities about the ERA?
Nothing that I have seen. I mean, Biden even is, last August said, hey, he was all for the Equal Rights Amendment and called on Congress to do something. He again said something in December, in his support of it. But I think he has more power than he's taking on this. And I can't answer the question why. It's a mystery to me. I have my speculations on some of it, but it's crazy to me.
It is crazy, Sherry.
So,
It is crazy. Are there any more questions for Sherry?
I have a quick follow-up on the question about states preparing for this 700 laws or something that need to be changed. Could that be somewhat compared to these trigger laws that states were passing in the hopes that Roe would fall? Is it the same sort of thing in reverse, where people are looking at what would happen?
No, they aren't really trigger laws. It's realizing, hey, they have some discriminatory laws on their books, and they're actually trying to fix those.
Ahead of time, even
Not
if
ahead of time,
doesn't
just
pass.
fixing them. They're just realizing they should be doing it.
So they're behaving as if there was already equality.
They're behaving as they know that equality should be in the law and doing it whether there's an amendment or not.
That's
Well done.
great. Yeah, I didn't know that was happening. That's important.
Yeah, there's quite a bit going on
And
there.
so maybe we should be showcasing some of that. Actually.
Yeah, the flip side of it is, then why do you need the Equal Rights Amendment if they're doing it already?
Exactly.
So I don't want to give ammunition in the wrong direction.
Okay.
Miriam has a question. She has her hand up.
Hello, how are you all?
Good.
I wanted to ask about I'm confused about the ERA. Is it actually legislation across the United States?
It is a amendment to the U.S. Constitution. It would be amendment number 28.
And it's ratified by 38 states.
Right, which is the 3/4 majority required.
So will all 50 have to obey by it?
Yes, that is the amendment. I don't know if you were here when I showed the slide showing how the wording of it is similar to the wording of the 19th Amendment for giving women the right to vote.
I saw that.
Okay. So again, that was not ratified by every state, but the 38 states ratified it, and that's when it became part of the U.S. Constitution.
Okay, thank you.
All right, last call for questions. Anyone? If you have a question?
I have a tiny little question. I'm sorry, you keep asking questions. I really want to know. Sherry has been my teacher for years on this, because I was one of those people who was just past the era where they were really pushing it. And I said all the time, well, what is it for? Why do we need it? And Sherry has been my guide, my teacher, and now I'm a true believer. So my question now is, do you know, this might be too random, are there other amendments which have been ratified but have been sitting around waiting for the archivist to publish them? Is this a typical situation or unique?
It's never happened before. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. It's never happened before?
No.
Well,
people
if
hate
I may
women
say
this
something.
I think there was one case where it was delayed by a few months, but it was more because of what, I don't think it was intentionally delayed. I remember reading something about one of them that it took 3 or 4 months before it actually went in.
Yeah, well, this is a little bit more than 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
I'd say
we hit 3 years in 2 weeks.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. All right, well, thank you so much, Sherry.
And again, the best thing you can do is vote for pro-equality candidates, and that means vote for Democrats.
Yeah, 1000%. Republicans are not pro-equality.
There's a few, but
there's a few, but
you can pretty much bet on voting for a Democrat.
So since you're already talking, Sally, do you want to go ahead and talk about reproductive freedom?
Sure. You mean the lack of reproductive freedom?
Yes. That is
Okay.
what I mean.
For those of you who probably have not been following this so closely, let me give you a little bit of history here. You all probably remember Roe versus Wade was a decision by the Supreme Court in 1973. And what the Supreme Court did at that time was it combined a reading of the 9th and the 14th Amendment together to create a right of privacy. And it held that first trimester abortions would have no restrictions. Second trimester abortions could have reasonable health restrictions. And the third trimester abortions could be prohibited unless they were necessary to save the life or health of the mother. This particular case was upheld at least 4 times in the Supreme Court, the latest instance of which was in 2007. Then came a radical change in the Supreme Court and the complete craziness of the Republican Party. And down came in June 2022 the decision that is known by Dobbs, which was a Mississippi case. And the Supreme Court held that there is no privacy right in the Constitution. And that the only thing to do about abortion is to let the states regulate what they want to regulate. And we should remember here, or at least I'm trying to get you to remember, there is no federal law that protects abortion. Ruth Bader Ginsburg always said that Roe was fragile and that there should be a federal law. Well, there we are. It is fragile. It was fragile and it doesn't exist anymore. And now what we need is a federal law. Let me quickly give you an overview of the current situation, knowing that it changes just about every day. As far as I can tell, with regard to what the situations are in the state's legislation, 14 states have made it absolutely and totally impossible to get an abortion. Some states actually have the possibility of condemning women to criminal liability if they were helped or had an abortion. 7 more states drastically restricted to the extent that if they had been doing that back in 74 after Roe, all those laws would have been held illegal. And many, many states have enacted what is commonly called the heartbeat law, which means that as soon as you can hear a heartbeat through ultrasound, you cannot get an abortion. And that usually takes place about 6 weeks, which is usually before any women know that they're even pregnant. As my little researcher, Diane Haven, who's on this call, will tell us, there have been thousands and thousands and thousands of bills introduced in state legislatures since Dobbs to thoroughly ban or restrict abortion. 148 bills have become law in various states. They're usually Republican states, by the way. Statistics show that 46% of pregnancies are unwanted, and of those, 34% end in abortion. And of those that end in abortion, 50% of those are medication abortions, which I'll get to in a minute. On the state level, there's movement in Democratic states largely to incorporate the right to an abortion in state constitutions. You know, the states have their own constitutions by and large, which can differ from the US Constitution. And there are 10 states that have actually always had or recently have incorporated the right to an abortion in the Constitution. Ohio had a referendum, and I think it was 67%, but there's someone on this call, Christina, that can correct me, that voted to put the right to an abortion in the Constitution of Ohio. Of course, the legislature is running around trying to figure out how to make that null and void, but we'll see what happens. And Florida currently has a petition out there to get the number of required signatories to put the question on the ballot in November. And they're very close in Florida. I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but if you're a Florida voter, please get in contact with us so we can have you sign the petition to put the abortion rights on the ballot for Florida voters. The number of litigation lawsuits, state and federal, is so large that I haven't seen anybody that could possibly count them, especially if you count all the ones that are in the pipeline that are going up to state Supreme Courts or the Supreme Court. As far as medication abortion concerns, I don't know how many of you know about it, but there's one pill that can be taken in a doctor's office or at home, and it's followed usually by a second medication with a series of 4 pills. If the pregnancy is beyond 9 weeks, some physicians will prescribe a second round. This is the forefront of the fight right now because 50% of abortions are medication abortions. There are states that are, such as Texas, who have banned abortions based on medication abortion, and they are trying to ban your right in Texas to order this medication on the internet or even traveling to another state to procure the medication. Right now, we're waiting for the Supreme Court, which has agreed to hear a case regarding medication abortion, which concerns the legality of the FDA approval of one of the abortion medications. There was a case, I guess where, in Texas, and it went all the way up to the highest federal court that's responsible for Texas. And this case was brought by an association of doctors against abortion, who claimed that the FDA had not followed its procedures, that it's a dangerous pill, and that it should maybe remain legal, but with great restrictions on its use. 3 states are now part of that lawsuit: Missouri, Kansas, and Ohio. And we think that that should come down for decision sometime this summer, although there's no way of knowing. So the situation is where we used to be able to get abortions in all 50 states because of Roe versus Wade, certainly during the first trimester and largely during the second trimester, we can no longer get abortions in the United States in any kind of red state. And this affects mostly, but not only, minority women who are poor, who have children, who are barely putting their lives together with maybe 3 jobs and who cannot take time off. So as Democrats, I think we should be aware of how this impacts the poor women and minority women, and who are mostly poor as well, and the fact that we need to get something done. So where does that leave us? Right now, DA members that live in foreign countries, because that's what we're called Democrats abroad, tend to live in countries where abortion is legal under certain circumstances. Some of it is restricted, some of it is not restricted, but we're spoiled. Our young members are spoiled. But American women don't have this right. In over 21 states, they can't get an abortion. And more if they're late, if they don't have money, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to do something about this because it is not only taking our rights to choose completely away, but it is putting us as, and I don't think you said it this way in your introduction, but Politics Woman certainly did in her video. They want us to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. So if I think we lived in a time when that was not the case. So why are we going backwards, and what do we need to do to make sure this right is again offered to our daughters and our granddaughters and our great-great-granddaughters? So I guess you want to know, and I hope you're asking yourself, what can we do to stop this situation and to get us back in a situation that we were when Roe was still alive? Well, first, we need to get more states to legalize abortion in their state constitutions. To do this, we need to work with the Democratic state parties, and DA has relationships with the states because we have set up state committees. And so if you live in a state that doesn't permit abortion or has very, very bad state laws, please join the state committee from DA. And if you have any questions on how to do that, let us know. The second point is we need to roll back the abortion restrictions and bans in state laws. Well, how do we do that? I'll get to that in a minute. And we need to pass a federal abortion law legalizing abortion, such as the Women's Health and Protection Act, which was actually voted by the House, but it never even made it to the Senate floor. and it is considered dead right now because it was only active during the particular session of contract. So in case any of you are wondering, I don't know how you could, but if you're wondering what's going to happen if Trump is elected, I think these restrictions are going to get worse and worse because the Republicans are, and they've introduced a couple of bills not to legalize abortion in the federal level, but to ban it totally. And the ban, if it's a federal ban, will affect all the states that actually permit abortion. So this could get worse. And if we don't take back Congress, all of it, the House and the Senate, I guarantee you it's going to get worse. In which case, the United States will be one of very few countries in the world, including in South America, which is a fairly Catholic environment. They have legalized abortion in Argentina and Chile, for example. So we're going to be an outlier in the United States. And that's not necessarily new because the United States, just by the way, have refused to ratify the International Treaty on the Rights of Women, a UN treaty. So what can you do? Please register to vote, because if you don't register, you can't vote. And once you register, you need to vote. I think Anne will sum this up when she gets there, but the DA has a very special site called votefromabroad.org, where you can actually register, do everything you need to get a ballot from your state. It takes a grand total of about 7 minutes. I've done it, and it's been incredibly streamlined, and it's really easy. So what can you do other than get depressed? Join a DA state team. Volunteer to help us on our website, where you can see volunteer to be the volunteer on the Women's Caucus website. And if you are really into the issue, join my team. Send us an email at gwc.reproductivejustice@democratsabroad.org. It's a depressing presentation, but I don't make the laws. I just want to make sure you're all aware of them. And also that you know this is going to get worse. If our own President Biden can't simply pick up the phone to tell the archivist to insert the 28th Amendment into our Constitution, imagine what is going to happen to the states' legislation if Trump comes in. And imagine all the young women in the United States in childbearing ages once a federal ban on abortion comes through. Imagine that. We're back in the Stepford Wives, and I don't think any of us want to see that happen. So please register to vote, and I'll take any questions you might have if I can answer them. And thank you, Angela, for putting all those links in the chat room.
If anybody has a question for Sally, oh, thank you, Miriam. Christina, you have a question.
Oh, sorry about that. If 10 states already have it in their constitution that ban, how will that affect those states?
Well, theoretically, some woman will go to an abortion, will not, well, maybe they'll get the abortion, that would be great, but will not get the abortion. And it'll have to be litigated again that in Ohio, for example, they have the right to an abortion because it's in the state constitution, and therefore the legislation that may prohibit it is illegal just within the state system. So, but it's the United States, so everything gets litigated. But theoretically, a woman who wants an abortion, if the state constitution says abortions are legal, no matter what, then she can insist on getting an abortion. But as we all know, when you're lying on a table and the doctor says no, it's a little bit hard to argue legalese. So I think we're going to have a hard time getting the state legislation to be rolled back in those states where the Constitution says you have the right to an abortion. But I think we're going to have to wait and see, because I'm not aware of any suits so far that have a state constitution not guaranteeing, but legally making abortion legal, and a state law that prohibits it because it's in direct constitution. Normally, the priority of all laws are constitutions, federal law, state law, and local ordinances. And the top one takes precedent on everything else, which is why it's so scary if the Congress passes a federal law banning abortion.
Right, right.
I hope I answered your question. It was a little long. I really don't have the answer.
No. I assumed that if it was a federal law, then the state laws would be null and void.
Exactly. But it could go both ways. It could validate abortion a federal law, or it could ban it, which is why it's so important to make sure that we take back Congress.
Okay, our next question is from Mohammed. Do you want to ask your question, Mohammed?
Yeah, my question was, first of all, what can you tell me about that case in Texas, Kate Cox, and like how the Texas Supreme Court responded to that? And then number two, how is the fight to keep mifepristone on, right? So that it's not banned. How is that going? And yeah, those are my two questions.
Well, Kate Cox was refused an abortion in Texas, and she left the state to get her abortion, if memory serves me right. She needed to get her abortion quickly. So there was, it didn't really litigate all the way to the top of the Texas judicial pyramid. On medication abortion, it's before the Supreme Court. And it's a complicated case because there are a number of issues, and one concerns whether or not the association that sued successfully in Texas has actually the right to sue. And my guess is if the Supreme Court wants to get rid of the substantive issues in this case, meaning whether or not the FDA has the right to do what it did, which was not only approve the pill, but also loosen up with the Biden administration the ability to get the pill. It will probably find that the plaintiffs didn't have standing to sue, which is a procedural issue as opposed to a substantive issue. But right now, I mean, if you're interested in that case, you can read the briefs by going to the Supreme Court website. I mean, they're not easy. They're long, but there are basically 3 or 4 issues. One is whether or not the plaintiffs had the right to sue, whether or not they had standing, as we say. 2, whether the FDA procedure for approval of the pill was carried out under the circumstances that it should have been carried out. And 3, whether or not the recent loosening of the conditions under which the pill can be distributed and sold and used by women are safe and are within the realm of the FDA. The bigger consequences of this case, if it really goes south, is it could take the power away from the FDA to approve anything related to abortion, meaning all the medication abortions and all kinds of other pills. So and medication. So I think we'll just have to wait. But if you really want the details, you can read the briefs on the Supreme Court website. I hope that answered your question, Mohammed. Okay, I see you wrote in the chat room. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Sally. Next, we're going to hear from Linda Addison. She's our VFA person, and she is the queen of voting from abroad. So welcome, Linda.
Thanks. Honestly, I have to say, I just texted Angela to say, I just looked at the participant list. I don't think there's a person on this call who doesn't know about vote from abroad already. I'm not sure what I'm going to tell anyone on this call that they don't already know, but I'll give you my 2 minutes. We just finished up with a big volunteer fair here in the UK, which was awesome. Had about 100 people show up for it. People are really energized, and that was really positive. And I think this weekend, as you guys know, Monday is MLK Day, but it's also International Voter Registration Day. We have a whole full 56-hour marathon of Zoom the Vote this weekend to help people send in their FPCAs. And our goal, as stated by Martha, is to get a quarter of our membership have their FPCA submitted by the end of the first quarter, which gives us through the GPP to do that. But the way to do that is just to promote use of vote from abroad. We have we were talking to the folks here and just talking about the website and how, you know, it is 100% been invented, updated, changed, revamped, improved, corrected, fixed by volunteers. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work has gone into this website, and our IT team just do an amazing job in it. But this year, after the revamp of 2021, it's meant to be even easier for voters to do a self-directed experience. They don't have to have the voting nerd people standing next to them helping answer the questions. So we have big hopes for this year, and we really, really want to make sure and send back even more ballots. But to do that, we got to get everyone to send in their FPCAs. So International Voter Registration Day is Monday. I have a whole entire folder of here, I'll put it in the chat, folder of posters and social media posts and whatever you can do to promote that outside of our organization. I mean, inside we've had plenty of emails and notifications about it. I think there's not a person who doesn't know about it. So if we can just, if anything you can do to help us get that word out beyond. One of the things we asked everyone to do here today was to do their FPCA before they left. We asked them to remember to confirm it with their local election official. And we asked them to text or call 3 friends, just 3 American friends. Everybody has 3 American friends somewhere outside America, and have them do theirs too. And just the actual act of asking your friends to vote is extraordinarily powerful. So I'm just here to say, let's do that. And anything you guys can help us do to get the word out to the members, to get people to know that it's not hard, it's not complicated, and we have so much help for our voters. You know, please send them to us, and we're happy to help them. So I don't really have any anything really important to say, because you guys already know about the website. But I see Dana has her hand up, but she's probably just going to say something nice.
Now, I actually have a question for you, because there's something new this year, which I'm unfamiliar with, and that is registering for a ballot for the GPP. And I also have to say thank you for the incredible work that y'all do. Just gets better and better. And this is making it, you know, all the easier also for DA members. But can you share with us a little about how that will work? Or do we need to do it there, or can we do it either way?
I'm gonna end up deferring to Sherry, but I'll tell you what little tiny thing I know. What I know is that when you go through to do your FPCA, and it gets to the part where it says, you know, your party, and if you declare your party, if you don't tick Republican, it will ask you if you want to join DA or confirm your membership. And at that point, I believe Sherry will tell us the details. It asks you if you want to register for your GPP ballot, which would be a remote ballot. So you would then have the choice, as I understand it, you will receive a ballot by email, but you also have the option, if you live in a place with an in-person GPP, that you can vote in person instead. And that, I assume each voting center will check that. I am not the voting center gal.
Okay, so we'll get an electronic ballot, but let's say we're the voting center manager. Unfortunately.
Oh, that's Sherry.
We're gonna vote
Sherry
in
knows
person.
the answer to that. Sherry will know the answer to that.
Sherry will
I've got to travel home though,
All
so
right.
can I jump off before you answer that, Sherry?
Sure.
Because there's a huge protest in London, and if I don't get home in time, I'm not gonna make it. Anyway,
right.
Any questions anytime ever about Vote From Abroad, comms@votefromabroad.org. Happy to help you, happy to make posters for you, happy to do whatever you need. Please help us get the word out. Thanks.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. I guess I'm almost the last one to speak.
But if
but
you want me to answer that question
yeah, go
from
ahead.
Dana, I
answer
can go
that.
ahead and do that real
Thank
quickly.
you.
Yeah, what we have this year is we have the ability for people to easily vote remotely. And we are requesting, though, that they request their ballot ahead of time. And there are 2 different ways to do that. One is by using Vote From Abroad, and that one is the preferred way because it's a twofer. You get registered both for your state elections as well as for the global primary. So we're asking people to do it that way. As of about 6 hours ago, if you go to votefromabroad.org, democracyabroad.org/GPP. You'll see the landing page that is for the GPP that gives just a little bit of a description about it. It's also over on the DA website as well. An email is going out to give people the opportunity to also use a form to request their ballot. That one takes manual effort. If you do it all through VFA, no human is involved, and it is 10x more efficient and less error prone. And so we are really hoping that no one uses the online form, but uses VFA instead.
Thank you, Sherry.
Mhm.
I have one more thing that I would like to share with everyone. I just put a little link in the chat. It is a list of things you can do, and I'm going to share my screen. 1 second. There are a lot of things that people can do to help get out the vote because, as we have seen and heard from our various speakers, this is super important, especially for women, but for everyone, really. That we help get out the vote. And we're going to have to search high and low and sort of beat the bushes to get people to vote. The first thing, of course, is request your own ballot. And then remind your friends and family and colleagues who live abroad to vote. Also remind your friends and family in the US to register and to make sure that they actually are registered, because there are a lot of states that have been purging people from the voter rolls. And it's just really important that everybody makes sure that they can vote. It would be terrible for somebody to show up at the polls or in the case of people living overseas, to think they're going to automatically get a ballot and they just don't. So it's better to request a ballot and verify if you live in the States that you haven't been purged. There's a really great thing that you can do, and it's hanging up vote from abroad flyers that around places where you think Americans may be, or maybe you don't know. I usually put them up like at the grocery store. There are about 300 Americans that live in the town that I live in, which is not a lot for Germany, but I live in a small city. And I put up lots of these flyers around town. One thing that I would really encourage everyone to do is to join our democracy squad. We're looking for people who who like to use the internet and can go around and spread the word through the internet. And if you sign up, you'll learn a lot more. We have a lot of options for things for people to do. You can do phone banking. Our first phone banking is kicking off on Sunday, but we'll be phone banking all throughout the year. You can join our voter assistance team. You can write a letter to your alma mater and ask them to encourage their study abroad students to request an absentee ballot and provide them the information. You can also volunteer with us with the GWC or with Global or with your local country committee, because they need help too. And of course, as always, a donation will help our efforts tremendously. Plus, you can follow our social media, because that helps too. That when people like and share our social media, it helps boost the algorithms so that we get more people than what we would normally get. That's a really important thing to do. So if you have any questions about helping get out the vote, you can contact me at communications@democratsabroad.org. So with that, I will turn it over to Anne.
All right. It's been really interesting afternoon with everybody, and I thank all of you for coming. I would like to remind you all that GWC has a continuing program of events and actions to get involved in, a lot of the things that Angela said. And tomorrow afternoon, we have a really interesting Books Abroad session.
It is at, hold on, I'll tell you. I should be there. So
That's
I think we're all
correct.
going to be there, but
it's at 4 o'clock. That's
okay.
correct.
So Connie and Sheila are running our Books Abroad team, and the name of the book is Enter Ghost. So it should be extremely interesting. Also, And I think the volunteer link has been in the chat box a couple of times. We really are in a situation now where we desperately need volunteers. And if you're not sure what you can do, or if you feel like maybe you're not quite ready, our wonderful volunteer coordinator, Christina Skovsgaard, would love to have a chat with you. And she's so good at giving suggestions about how you might plug in. There she is. So I think Christina can really help you figure out how to be a part of us. And it is so rewarding. It is such a great feeling to go to bed at night and know that you've done something. You don't feel helpless when you're watching the television or hearing these horrible stories. You go, okay, I'm doing my best. I volunteered for GWC and I did something today. And if you don't have the time to vote, you can always donate a little something to us. Every little bit helps, and all the wonderful things that we do. Linda talked about Vote from Abroad. It's very expensive. Angela talked about phone bagging. That's expensive too. And putting on this show is also not free. So any little bit that you have would be very much appreciated. The point is, get involved, whatever works for you, and don't put it on the back burner because we are out of time. We don't have time left. So please see what you can do. So that's the end of my bit, and I guess we'll be ending the call now, unless Angela or someone says something else to say. And I'd like to wish you all a very happy new and blue year coming up. So thanks so much.
Yes, happy blue year. Let's hope. But let's not hope. Let's work and get it done.
See you all tomorrow at the book club meeting. Even if you didn't read the book, it's very, very interesting. It'll be a nice conversation. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.